When we got close, the driver's window rolled down. We asked if the man in the driver's seat had a jack. He nodded silently, pointed to the trunk, and then motioned for us to wait while he edged the car forward a little to give us space. The sedan started backing up toward us slowly. He opened the trunk. Right as Harmony grabbed the jack, the rear door flew open, and a woman fell out onto the gravel as if someone had shoved her. The car hit the gas and vanished instantly before we could even blink. The woman was in rough shape. One side of her face was swollen. She had rope burns on her wrists, and she was barely conscious. Harmony, who'd already taken some emergency care classes, immediately knelt down and checked for a pulse.
I can't find a pulse. Oh my God, Joel, what do we do?
She sobbed. I was horrified. My blood had run cold. Just a few moments earlier, we were so happy. Harmony and I were on the back roads to our friend Becca's farmhouse in rural Tennessee to spend our summer vacation together. We were both 19, done with our first year of community college, and we'd been looking forward to this trip all semester. She was in the driver's seat of her Civic, with a playlist she'd been building since April. I was half asleep in the passenger seat when she tapped my arm.
Don't look now. That car has taken every turn we've taken for the last 15 minutes.
I checked the rearview mirror and saw a black sedan a few car lengths behind us, keeping pace.
Probably just a coincidence. You know how the roads are out here.
I shrugged. Harmony nodded and kept driving, but I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror. When we hit Route 70, she took the cutoff onto Catholic Creek Road instead of staying on the main highway. It's a narrower stretch that runs through the woods and shaves about 25 minutes off the drive, but it was pretty isolated. Nobody used that road unless they knew their way around. The sedan took the turn right behind us. Neither of us said anything for a moment.
Okay, that's definitely not a coincidence. We are being followed.
I told her I was calling 911, but before I could even get through to the dispatcher, the sedan floored it and whipped past us. As it went by, I looked at the driver and saw a pale, middle-aged guy, still as a statue, staring straight ahead. His eyes flickered over to me for a split second before the car disappeared around a bend. We laughed it off, trying to shake the weird feeling. About 5 minutes later, our front right tire blew. Harmony pulled over onto the gravel shoulder. We could see shredded glass on the road. Both of our phones had 0 bars, and the sun was going down fast.
Babe, look!
Harmony pointed. The black sedan was parked up the road, maybe 200 feet ahead, on the same side. We sat in the car arguing about what to do.
We can't just wait here until it's dark.
I snapped.
You have the taser, right?
She nodded and grabbed it. We got out and walked up to the sedan. And now, here we were, in the middle of nowhere with a dead body. We started arguing about what to do. It was a remote spot, and if any local found a body next to a car with a flat tire, we'd instantly look like the killers. We were literally trapped next to the evidence. Panicking that the police would suspect us of a crime we hadn't committed, we hid the body in our trunk before fixing the tire. Once we were done, Harmony drove like a maniac. About 10 minutes in, we spotted that same black sedan at a really dusty, super old gas station. It only had one rusted-out pump and a tiny, dim cafe attached. I squinted and could see the car was vacant. We figured they must be inside. As we slowly pulled into the lot, I quickly scanned the outside of the building, but couldn't find any CCTV cameras.
Let's move her back, quick!
We hurriedly got her out and lifted the trunk lid, but before we could move her, she coughed and gasped awake. We froze. The woman sat up coughing. She told us her husband and his friend had tried to murder her to hide her husband's affair. I could barely understand a word she was saying.
Gosh, girl, give me a second, I'll ring 911.
Harmony responded. She begged us not to.
I'm really fine. I want to take my revenge by myself.
I watched her walk back to the black sedan. She turned, smiled weakly at us, and got in. Harmony and I exchanged uncertain looks. Eventually, we got back in our car and drove the rest of the way to Becca's, but we could barely sleep. The next morning, a local news alert popped up on Becca's phone. It said the black sedan had crashed the night before, wrapping itself around a utility pole on a county road about 14 miles from the gas station. Both guys in the front seat were dead. The preliminary reports said the car had been going well over 100 miles per hour when it wrecked. A line in the article stated that the medical examiner had confirmed a third victim in the back seat. It was a woman, but based on her body temperature and other indicators, she had been dead for over 12 hours before the accident. I looked at Harmony, sitting across from me at Becca's kitchen table. She had gone pale. The woman we had driven around with for 15 minutes, the one who'd held my wrist and begged me not to call the cops, had been dead since before we even found her. We finally gave a statement to the county sheriff 2 days later. The deputy who took our story wrote everything down. The investigation into the 2 dead men wrapped up a few weeks later. I still drive through rural Tennessee sometimes when I visit Becca. I always take the main highway now, and I always slow down to look whenever I see a car pulled over on the shoulder. I have no idea why. Logically, there's no way looking will ever help anything, but I can't help myself. Figuring the door was busted, I pushed it 3 more times. Suddenly, the door flew open, and George appeared, breathing heavily through his nose. He was taller than I remembered. His eyes were dark and empty, as if he hadn't had a proper night's sleep in years, and he looked furious. I froze. I opened and closed my mouth.
George, let the poor kid in.
Sandra giggled from somewhere inside the house. "Get inside," George growled. "I'm fine. I started to protest, but George had already yanked me through the doorway and locked the door behind us. I remembered the day our neighbors George and Sandra Halpern moved onto Derringer Street. The guy was super quiet, always shot dirty looks at us kids, and never talked to anyone. When my mom went to greet them with welcome to the neighborhood cookies, he yelled at his wife, Sandra, just for opening the door. After that, the blinds were always drawn, and he never let her out of his sight. If Sandra was outside and someone tried to chat her up, George would pop up instantly, grab her arm, and march her back inside. Our neighbor, Mrs. Winson, called it controlling. Mom said it was concerning. All the parents on the block would gossip about him and told the kids that going anywhere near their house was strictly forbidden. I obliged, except for that one summer vacation. It was a Saturday evening, and I was bored out of my wits. My best friend Danny was stuck in Florida at his grandparents', and my older brother was busy working at the pool and wanted nothing to do with me. I'd already biked to the gas station and back so often it wasn't even fun anymore, so I decided to play Ding Dong Ditch. I laced up my kicks and headed out, scanning the block for a perfect target. I somehow ended up on the street across from the Halperns, and in my 11-year-old brain, hitting the scariest house on the street felt like the ultimate flex. I figured it was time to test my luck. I tiptoed onto the porch and smashed the doorbell before I sprinted away and ducked behind a bush. I waited, maybe 5 minutes, but nothing happened. And then, about 15 minutes later, I was inside their home, facing the weird married duo. Sandra was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of lemonade. When she spotted me, she gave me this massive ear-to-ear grin and asked how I was doing. Good? I managed to stammer out.
Here, have some lemonade.
Up close, she was actually pretty, with dark eyes that crinkled at the corners when she laughed. She started chatting me up about school and my summer plans, even cracking a joke that was actually pretty funny. Meanwhile, George simply stood in the corner with his arms crossed, watching her without saying a single word, like some prisoner. Do you mind if I use the bathroom?
Sure thing. Just head down the hallway. It's the second door.
Sandra said, pointing the way. I nodded and headed that way. but I was so busy looking over my shoulder to see where George was that I ended up opening the wrong door. The smell hit me first. It was thick and waxy, with this gross, rotten scent underneath, like someone had left candles burning over raw meat. The room was pitch black, except for maybe 30 candles set up in a big circle on the floor. Right in the middle was a man-sized doll, though only about 2 feet tall, made out of fabric, what looked like real hair, and some other stuff I couldn't identify from where I was standing. Ceramic bowls were placed all around it. I stepped a bit closer and nearly pissed my pants. The bowls were filled with animal bones, some dark, crusty stuff that looked a lot like dried blood, and rows of baby teeth in different shapes and sizes. The floor was covered in symbols, painted with incredibly steady strokes, a whole grid of them stretched from wall to wall. The doll was clearly meant to be a man. It was even wearing a tiny version of the same gray button-up George was always in. I yelped and turned around to bolt, only to come face to face with Sandra, who was still grinning.
Guess little Lucas doesn't watch where he's going, huh?
She giggled, dragging her index finger from my temple down to my cheek. Sweat glistened on my palms, and my heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. I tried to back away, but she moved closer.
You see, George was my high school crush forever. But he only had eyes for my best friend. I had to figure out a way to fix that.
I glanced back down the hall. George was still standing down there, watching us. His expression hadn't changed, and his eyes were as hollow as if he were a corpse dragging his body around. Suddenly, Sandra grabbed my shirt and pulled me closer.
If you tell anyone about this room, I'm going to make you love me too.
I booked it home and told my mom I'd been hanging out at Danny's. I sat through dinner that night and answered questions about my day, but I didn't breathe a word about what I'd seen. I was only 11, but I wasn't stupid. I knew if I told my parents, they'd call the cops and maybe Sandra would get in trouble, but I didn't think anyone could actually stop her. I steered clear of Derringer Street for the rest of the summer. One time, when I was riding by, I caught a glimpse of George standing on the porch like a statue in that same gray shirt. He still looked furious, but now I knew the nightmare he was living every single day. We ended up moving a couple of years later, and I never laid eyes on either of them again. I've thought about it a lot since I grew up. Whatever was going on in that room and whatever Sandra thought she was doing, it worked. George never left. In those 2 years of watching them across the street, he never once looked like he wanted to go anywhere. And she never looked like she was breaking a sweat over it. Jacksonville, Florida was my mom's hometown. And even though she'd moved up to New York with my dad decades ago, we still headed back every summer to kick back and reconnect with our roots. It was the first week of summer break. My 2 best friends, Mark and Lyle, and I were chilling by the waters. The beach was totally packed that day. It was peak tourist season, so there were families, umbrellas, and little kids running around everywhere. We were hanging out by the water when we noticed this middle-aged guy moving frantically through the crowd, practically screaming "Pamela" at the top of his lungs. Everyone was watching him, and people were moving out of his way. "The dude looks like he's about to pass out," Mark said. I agreed. He looked like he was about to cry, and he kept spinning around, checking faces and looking everywhere at the same time. I finally stood up and told the guys I was going to go ask what was up. Mark tagged along. We caught up to him, right by the lifeguard stand. The second he saw us approach, he grabbed my arm and told us his 7-year-old daughter was missing. I was lying on the sand, and I got a call. When I turned around, she was gone. I asked if he had a picture, but he said his phone was dead. He could only give us a description. She has dark brown hair, is wearing a pink swimsuit, and is 7 years old. Her name is Pamela. He begged us to help look while he waited near the security shack in case she came back there. It seemed logical. We split up. Mark went left toward the pier, Lyle went right toward the parking lot, and I walked farther down the shoreline away from all the main crowds. I searched for a while, scanning faces and looking for a little girl in pink. The farther I walked from the crowds, the quieter it got. Soon, families started to thin out, and the noise died down. Suddenly, my eyes fell on a small figure curled into a ball under a palm tree about 30 feet ahead. The girl looked about 7 years old and matched the description, and she was sobbing. Sighing in relief, I walked over, crouched down, and told her I was looking for her and that her dad was waiting at the security shack. She stiffened, still hiccuping. She stared at me in horror and started shaking her head violently.
My dad is dead.
What? She told me she had come to the beach with her mother that morning when a tall man had approached her while her mother wasn't watching and offered her chocolate. She was lured away from the crowd.
He took me to the cottage and tried doing bad things.
She said she managed to run away and found this spot under the tree. She hasn't moved since because she was too scared and couldn't find her mother. Everything rearranged in my head at once. Disgust churned in my stomach. I was furious, horrified, and disgusted at the same time. I reassured the girl that she was safe with me before I hurriedly grabbed my phone and called Mark. I told him to get Lyle and bring security to the shack immediately. Don't leave that monster alone. God knows whose daughter he'd try and ruin next. The girl had calmed down a bit. I told her we were going to find her mom. She walked at least a few feet away from me and looked ready to bolt. I took her back toward the main crowd and kept scanning for her mother. Suddenly, a commotion broke out somewhere to the left. People were shouting, and a crowd was forming near the security shack. When we got there, 3 security guards had the man pinned on the sand. He was screaming that he only wanted to play with the little girl and that we had misunderstood. A woman burst through the crowd and grabbed Pamela so hard she almost knocked her over. The girl started crying into her shoulder. Her mother was shaking and crying too, and couldn't stop thanking everyone around her. Police arrived and took him away in handcuffs. I gave a statement and told them everything. The officer wrote it all down and said the setup was a usual trick that child predators often used. They'd use other people to bring them the victim, so it would be less suspicious and faster. Hearing that made me feel so sick that I couldn't shake it for weeks. Mark and Lyle met me afterward. We didn't talk much on the drive home. I think all 3 of us were running the same calculation, how close we came to just handing her over. If she hadn't told me about her dad being dead in time, and if she just said yes when I mentioned the security shack, and if she'd been a little younger or a little more trusting, we would have walked her right back to him. He would have thanked us, and she would have been gone before we even made it back to our towels. It has been nearly half a decade. I still go to the beach in the summer, but I think about that day every time I'm there, and about how ordinary he looked, and how convincing his fear was, and how natural it felt to want to help a desperate father. He used our instinct to do good as a weapon against us. We're raised to be the good guys, to have a heart from childhood. But we've never been taught that the monsters don't just hide in the dark. They use our own empathy to bait the hook. One tiny, well-meaning slip-up, or a moment of eagerly being a good person, and you've handed someone their worst nightmare on a silver platter. Learn to be kind, but don't forget to stay clever at all times.